Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Nice. Well, that's exciting.
You want to go ahead and get started on that segment?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Alrighty. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen History Month, the month in which we discuss the contributions that geeky gentlemen have made to history, but that have been ignored by a biased educational system, except not at all. I am your host, Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
Professor of History, Steve Baxey.
But you're not the...
Look, they don't need to know that, okay? I can just pretend this is the internet.
I saw something like that on Twitter, which was like, you just tell businesses you have a degree. No one checks. There's nothing they can do to stop you. I'm like, that's such a bad idea.
That's not true at all. Have these people ever tried getting a job?
I mean, do you think they actually call up the colleges and shit?
When I got my job, they did a background check and asked for proof and stuff.
Okay, I don't know.
So, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends. Are you...
Yeah, but you work at, an old-timey, you work at a place that's existed for thousands of years, apparently, and still does shit the old-school way, so I think you're just an exception. I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't sound like a good idea. It sounds like a good way to get fired and possibly hit with a lawsuit, but
yes.
At the same time, if they did just hire you and didn't do any background work, it's kind of their own fucking fault. So, I'm not your dad. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Definitely a high-risk, high-reward kind of situation.
Right? I don't know. There's certain companies where if it's just big enough, you just fucking, could get away with doing nothing at a certain point.
Remember, this was the premise of a long-running USA TV show called Suits, and it didn't end well.
Yeah. Anyway, so are we here talking about corporate greed and malpractice?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's very
nice.
normal topics for history.
Yeah. What are we talking about tonight, Steve?
All right, today we're talking about the 2023 biopic Air, directed by Ben Affleck and written by Alex Convery, something like that. It's a movie set in the mid-'80s when Michael Jordan is getting ready to enter the NFL, and it follows...
NFL.
Or not NFL, NBA is entering the NBA. And Matt Damon plays Sonny Vaccaro, who is the basketball guy at Nike, trying to sign Jordan and create the first Air Jordans.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting, because, I don't know, so I am not the sports guy in this podcast, right? But I'm going to tell you something that's going to probably piss you off a little bit.
Okay, all right.
I actually got to see Jordan.
Did you really?
Yep. My dad got tickets to the Bulls game and took me and a buddy of his from work.
When was this?
I was probably 6 or 7. It would have been late 90s, mid to late 90s.
Dang.
I've even got a book. It was one of his final seasons, I think. I even got a book that they were selling at the merch stand and stuff, where they took your picture and pasted it into the book, and you were Michael Jordan. I might have to go to my mom's and take a picture of that before I get this episode posted so I can put it up. But yeah, I actually got to see Jordan play. Yeah, late 90s because Rodman was on the team too. I don't remember literally anything about it except for looking for Rodman's rainbow hair at the time.
See, and the reason that just gets cooler and cooler with time, because now with the way the NBA works and with the way load management is, you could buy a ticket to any given basketball game in the year, and there is no guarantee that you get to watch LeBron play or Steph Curry play, because they might just sit out that game. It's kind of ridiculous now where like it's not even a 50-50 that you get to see the superstars of teams on the court, and so it feels like a waste to spend all that money on a ticket. But like in the 90s and in the early 2000s, like Shaq playing every game and Michael Jordan playing every game, that was something special.
Yeah, I also saw Kobe play.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that was brief. Because that was at a Lakers versus Pacers game. I went down to Indy with my friend David and his dad, and David was a huge Kobe fan. And so and so we went to go see because he just wanted to bring someone else along because his dad had an extra ticket, and so me, the non-sports guy, came, and we weren't expecting Kobe to play. He's just benched 90% of the game because it's the fucking Pacers. What does it matter?
Right.
But then toward the end of the game, the score got tied up pretty close, and so the final like 2 minutes or whatever of the game, they sent Kobe out to play, and they still lost because he was still warming up at that point. But it was, I don't know, it was just kind of cool. It's kind of fun that I've gotten those two of the big names for the person that doesn't like basketball.
Well, I mean, here's the thing though, right? In the history of sports, if you could pick any person to watch play live, there's maybe like 5 good options, and Michael Jordan's one of them. So you've basically checked it off for life, right? Like it's like Michael Jordan, it's like Tom Brady in a Super Bowl, it's like fucking Babe Ruth or something. Like of the greats, that's what you want, right? Like Wayne Gretzky or something like that. But yeah, no. Speaking of Jordan, because I'm not a big basketball guy by any stretch. I've gotten more into it over the last couple of years, but I really like Ben Affleck as a director, so that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about this movie. But the other thing is, it's really interesting to talk about Air and Michael Jordan and sports in conversation with what we talked about last time, which was what's left out of history. The reason this movie was on my mind was there was an essay published in Animus last week about Michael Jordan's legacy and stuff like the Last Dance documentary, which was a docuseries about Jordan's last year on the Bulls in the late 90s, movies like Air, and then a lot of like retroactive NBA podcasts where they talk about old games or old players and stuff. And the sort of the thrust of the article was this distinction in history where there was a paper from a few years ago where someone basically argued that because history means 2 things, it both means the past and it means figuring out the past. History has to have like an equal balance of the things that you actually see and then the methods that you employ to try and figure out the things that you couldn't have seen. And when you talk about things like sports or people like Michael Jordan, there is this sort of looming presence of this person that everybody witnessed their greatness. And because that's such a big part of like the cultural consciousness, like Michael Jordan is just slang for great at something, the actual act of being great can get kind of lost in the shuffle where people just presuppose it instead of explaining why it's great. And so the writer of the article brought up Air as an example of this, where things like Air and The Last Dance have this weird relationship to Jordan where his greatness is so assumed all throughout that it creates this sort of tension where the movie never has to do any work to justify that he's great to you. It has to do all the work that he makes things greater by simply being there. And then there is that tension gets exacerbated because Michael Jordan's not in the movie, but he's also not played by an actual actor. There's just a body double and you never see his face. So all those things in relationship to like how we talk about history and stuff, I thought would have been interesting. So that's why I wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the thing that stands out the most. I remember just seeing like a little side comment on this movie at some point that they essentially didn't cast anyone to play Jordan because Jordan's just too like recognizable a figure still to this day, even though he hasn't played in like 20 years or whatever. But he's just too recognizable. He's too iconic to have anyone just step into those shoes and play that role. And I mean, that's an interesting argument, but I can't help but feel like it just makes certain scenes a tiny bit awkward to a certain extent. So that side of it didn't 100% work for me. Now, I'll say something that's, I know you hate it, so it's probably going to be kind of controversial and cause an argument. If that's the way you feel, I see two options. One, don't make this movie. Or two, maybe consider looking into some of the technology like deepfakes. I know you hate those.
I do.
I think that might, like, if you honestly feel like it's just too iconic a personage to capture, but you really, really, really want to still make the movie, I don't know, maybe that's one of the use cases where it actually kind of makes sense. Though I still think that maybe they just should have just had an actor actually play Michael. Like, there's so many fucking biopics and stuff where it does not take much to make someone just look the part, or it's also just a good opportunity for someone who's, maybe a bit under the radar or hasn't really gotten a huge career yet to kind of come in and fill that role. I don't know. I'm not Ben Affleck. He's a better director than me, I guess, but I disagree with that choice.
When Ben Affleck said that, when I initially saw the movie a couple of years ago, I thought it was kind of a cop-out, because everyone... I get what he's saying. Everyone recognizes Michael Jordan. But here's the thing. They recognize NBA champion Michael Jordan. They recognize Air Jordan Michael Jordan. They recognize contemporary Michael Jordan. If you're setting a movie in, like, 84... before he's made a name for himself in the league and the shoes aren't out yet, I think you could have reasonably gotten away with just a younger guy who looks vaguely like him, because that's not the version of him in people's minds when they're looking at highlight reels. So there's enough of a distance there where it wouldn't have been a problem. Having said that, though, I think part of what makes this movie so interesting, and I really like this movie. I think it's a pretty good movie. It's not in like a top tier Ben Affleck movie, but I think it's a really good movie regardless. But having said that, part of what I like about this movie is it has, from the onset, it does this biopic thing that I normally hate, where there's like the montage of things from a specific year to force the audience to understand this takes place in the past. And it's always like these really boring shorthand stuff that you see all the time in period pieces. And the more you watch it, the more annoying it gets in other biopics. And this movie does it, so it's no exception to that. But this movie plays like so close to essentially just trying to have a conversation with reality that it kind of works for me. So the fact that Jordan's not really there, and that so much of the movie is coasting on this knowledge of Michael Jordan that you're bringing into it. The fact that Sonny, when he's giving that speech to Michael Jordan and his parents, is essentially just seeing into the future and showing you these NBA highlight reels of what Michael Jordan will be and speaking that into existence. And then that really great but also kind of terrifying line of the shoe is just a shoe until someone puts their foot in it, like Michael Jordan, and the idea that the brands the brands are not the things that sell. It's the way that the person can become a brand that causes them to sell. And that turn in capitalism in like the late 80s all the way to now where the person becomes the brand. I think all of that stuff on like a meta level almost requires you to not have Michael Jordan in the movie at all or not cast him, because this is not a movie I think that really cares about you being immersed in this is really the 80s. I think this is more so a movie that's like speaking at you from 40 years ago and saying all the stuff you're seeing right now, this is just a precursor from that.
Yeah, I think you and I are in agreement that they probably just shouldn't have had him in the movie if you were gonna kind of play fast and loose with it like this. I probably would have preferred an actor, but I guess just to satisfy what Affleck was talking about, this might be a use case for your deepfake technology or whatever, even if it's just for like one shot or something. It just feels, I don't know, uncanny otherwise. Or might feel uncanny to do that, but I don't know. That was the thing for me that stood out the most about this movie. But I would agree with you that it is still a really good movie. I really did enjoy it. It's just that it breaks the suspension of disbelief, I suppose, when they're all in the room and apparently no one is allowed to look at Michael Jordan. It just feels really, really odd. Hell, have Michael Jordan come play himself and then just use the de-aging technology. There we go. Because we've gotten pretty used to that one. Anyway. So yeah, I did quite enjoy this. I think the thing for me that stood out the most about this, and this usually when we're scraping the bottom of the barrel of the movie to talk about, but I think it's interesting that we're getting into this one so early. The thing for me that just fucking slapped about this movie was all the music.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is so good. They're just picking like all these, not like, forgotten gems or whatever, just these absolute fucking bangers from the 80s. I saw a post the other day that kind of cracked me up where it was, man, Mom, 80s music rocks. It's like, no, it didn't. You just like the music that survived the 80s. And I'm like, yep. No, that fucking feeling right there is so on point. Because I used to kind of fucking hate the 80s low-key. The fashion was really bad. I hated a lot of the fashion, the style. The cars in the 80s are garbage. And some of the music is just trash.
It's really abrasive, yeah.
Yeah. So I was never really a fan of the 80s, and I've softened on that over the years, and there's certainly things from it that I like now, but man, this movie really knew which fucking 80s songs to pick, because holy shit. It's just sitting there like fucking bopping my head during the scenes of the movie. It was a good time.
Yeah, I feel like this movie, the big thing about it that really works is that it kind of has that perfect Sunday afternoon on TNT kind of feel, where you just turn something on TV and then you get kind of low-key sucked into it. Like this, it gives me the same feeling in my mind as like Rainmaker, which is also a Matt Damon movie, funny enough, or A Few Good Men, where it's just so like scene to scene, it feels so kind of effortless and fun. All the actors in the movie are relatively big actors, but they're all playing like little bit parts here and there. They all have all this big personality and life to them. Every scene kind of feels like its own beginning, middle, and end sort of story, so you can jump in at any point. And it has some like nice emotional swings without being too melodramatic about it either. Like it's a solid comfort kind of movie that has just enough on its mind to keep it compelling without feeling like it's overbearing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of the it's not an overly complex narrative, which I think helps it. Um, so a lot of the just scene to scene stuff is just driving home this same, kind of crazy gambit over and over and over again, and it's just creating the tension from that. So every scene is like this new conversation where it's weird because we live in the world where the Air Jordan exists. So I don't have any actual tension of wondering if he's going to be able to make this happen. I'm just figuring out how he made it happen, right? But because it just all comes together so well, it creates that tension of, oh man, can he really make this deal? Is this going to bankrupt the company? Poor Nike.
Poor Nike. Yeah, I mean, Matt Damon in this is he's such a good, everyman, where you can totally feel that he knows what he's talking about, and he can be kind of an asshole sometimes, obviously, but he's passionate, and he's just, bottom of the tier enough that it really feels like you're rooting for an underdog every time he shows up. I love the scene when he goes to Jordan's mom in North Carolina, and he explains to her how the meetings with Adidas is going to go, and then it just goes exactly that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was funny, I just also... This movie just came at, the right time in my internet algorithm vibe, because I just also learned that the owner of Adidas was named Adolf. Yeah! And they joke about it in this. And Haley looked at me and was like, Adolf, really? I'm like, yeah, that was his name.
I love that line where he's like, some of us have a past and some of us were Nazis.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
The fucking agent is
god
mad. Oh my god.
Those phone conversations with the agent are insane, and I love them.
Oh, all the crazy threats. Holy shit. You have fucking herpes. Fucking yeah, you know a lot about herpes. Everyone's had herpes. Yeah, that's a good time. Oh, man.
I like that
the scene. Sorry, the thing I really liked about the scene where he goes to talk to the mom is when he's just so giddy about the phone car, the car phone. That was good. Sorry, you
yeah.
say something.
I like that bit a lot. I also really like at the end when he's he doesn't really want friends or family. He just wants to sell his company, make money, and then go eat by himself. And then at the end, he's just at a restaurant eating by himself as the credits roll. That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, good for him, I guess. He
yeah,
did what he wanted to do. Sounds sad, honestly, but hey.
That's kind of the thing
80s.
about
All people cared about was money.
And that's the thing about it that I feel is so interesting. Is there's kind of a feel good vibe to this movie, but it's all feel good stuff that's kind of horrifying if you think about it for any amount of time. Everything about what the agent says about just wanting to sell his money, the idea that we're in the 80s, which is the height of advertising and consumerism being shoved in your face all the time, cartoons being invented so that we could sell toys to kids, all kind of circling around this idea of let's take this person, this real sort of flesh and blood human being, and turn him into the most recognizable, most profitable brand in existence. And everyone's just kind of taking this as a foregone conclusion and pushing in that direction. And every time that happens, it always gets undercut by this, just like this little glimpse of humanity of like, this is kind of a sad existence, isn't it? There's that scene when they're working late over the weekend to put the presentation together, and Jason Bateman's talking to Matt Damon about his daughter and being divorced, and he's like, I always bring her a free pair of shoes. And that story where he's just kind of explaining where he needs to feel like he has a part in his daughter's life, and the only way he seems to know how to do that is by giving into this sort of foregone conclusion about consumerism. It's funny, it's well acted, but it's also just really sad.
Yeah. No, like, as a parent, there is that, there is, like, a definite feeling on that, where it's hard. Not hard. It's a process to tell your kid no. So sometimes it's easier to just give in to it. And sometimes you end up, like, just, they seem really excited in the moment, and it's not a matter of, like, is it the money? It's just, well, they seem really like this. Sure, whatever, I'll get it for them. And then, like, 2 days later, it's just sitting at the side of a bin and isn't touched again for months, you know? Like, that's a very particular feeling, and it makes it frustrating to give into that impulse purchase kind of thing. You always hear, like, old people talk about, oh, I played with my wooden duck for hours and hours. You know, that was a toy that required imagination. And I'm like, did you, like, really though? Did you? I don't know, because, like, well, like, you know, we're millennials, right? And our generation is just infamous for, you know, we still collect toys and we still watch our cartoons that we grew up with, and we're just, like, always marketed to with nostalgia and stuff. That they'll just all, like, none of the shows or movies that we grew up with will ever truly die, because it's just this constant nostalgia factory for us. Whereas older generations, like your early Gen Xers and your boomers, just don't give a shit about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, because your toys sucked and you didn't actually enjoy playing with them. So you just, you know, couldn't wait to go off and drink and, I don't know, commit hate crimes or whatever. I'll never forget my friend Nick's dad when we were in high school, talking to one of the guys, because it was like his birthday party or something. Talking to one of the guys there about how he's got an earring, a pierced ear. He's like, you know, and he was drunk as shit. This dude was always so fucking drunk. He's drunk as shit. He's just like, you know what we would have done if we saw a boy with a pierced ear back in my day? What? We would have hunted his F-ass down and beat the shit out of it. I'm like, what the
Jesus Christ.
Like, so that's just what I think. Like, you guys, I'm cool. I'm gonna play with my Legos. You go fucking commit your hate crimes. That's a long ass tangent, but I think there is something to that of just, you know, maybe giving into the consumerism isn't the worst thing in the world.
And that's sort of why I feel like the not casting Jordan part of it is kind of essential to what the movie's trying to do, or at least how I'm reading it, where essentially the whole idea of the person becoming a fiction that we sell to people, that's sort of the process of trying to make something authentic by making it as inauthentic as possible. I feel like that's almost a message you'd shoot yourself in the foot with if you had someone pretending to be Michael Jordan, when instead you're resting on this collective notion of him that's confused by not just what he did, but the memory of what he did that's never shown to you, and then this thing, that this sort of commemorative object that's always there, that's really got nothing to do with what made him great, but just exists as a thing that's backed by his existence. And he's never there. He's not the guy selling you the shoe, but his name's on it, and you just sort of imbue a certain power to it because of that, knowing full well that he's got nothing to do with the making of these things. And that element of it, I think, is really interesting. And I like that all the characters in this are always sort of resonating with this problem of like, how do I sell this thing? How do I turn my craft and my passion into something that is sellable? Because the movie doesn't care really, or Nike doesn't care that Michael Jordan's a good basketball player. The movie doesn't care that Michael Jordan is arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. The movie cares about taking advantage of someone who's good at something for the sake of selling that image to people. And Sonny's the only guy that really believes in the basketball side of it. I love the details of how that relationship works. Like, Sonny doesn't really have an office, but his office, quote unquote, is just the tape room, because all he does is sit in there and watch tape. And it's got these great bookend moments where he's talking to the guy at the convenience store about Michael Jordan before he enters the NBA, and then after he enters the NBA, and they're actually and the way he changes his narrative about it, and the way that they're actually kind of talking ball, or when he's in the boardroom meeting where they're trying to figure out who they're going to give their endorsement money to. And Sonny's just like, you guys don't watch basketball. Name one thing about his game that you actually like. And that the fact that he's so adamant about the game, the thing that really matters, but it's all in service to just selling a thing. That's sort of like empty object that is a replacement for love, that Jason Bateman's character kind of gets vulnerable about in the middle of. I think all that's really, really interesting. I feel like it's such a deceptively easy movie to digest that a lot of that darker stuff kind of doesn't hit until you go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt bad for Jason Bateman's character when he was sitting there talking about his daughter, and like just the nature of, I'm a dirty red, so I fucking like hate these mega corporations, right? And you're kind of seeing Nike was already very successful out the gate in everything else but basketball. So kind of seeing there and getting the emotional connection as they become a bigger, more monopolistic company. And then it just kind of like, it kind of, you're sitting there rooting for them to become a bigger monopoly. And then at the end of the movie, you get all the like, this person is here now, this person is here now. Then you get, Nike bought Converse in 2003. Ah, fuck. That's just what we needed. It's a complicated relationship. My personal friend absolutely. Joseph Stalin would not approve of this film. He would have sent them back for reshoots.
No, absolutely. Did you have a favorite person in this outside of just Matt Damon?
I'm gonna go with Chris Tucker. I did not see that dude in much ever. Yeah. So it was kind of surprising to see him come in here, and he's like got funny lines and funny moments, but it's not just like a purely comedic role. He's actually, he is kind of the voice of the black community's interests, which I thought was really fascinating. And he kind of, puts Matt Damon on the course to go talk to Jordan's mom and stuff. So that was just kind of a cool role. Like you said, it's not a big part, but they get like a very recognizable actor to play it. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's almost kind of like the closer, and there is that sort of like subtle corporate tactic thing of like he's the only black guy in the room to make them comfortable, and they even sort of reference that when Jordan's dad's talking to him. But he's got so much personality and so much presence that he's just really entertaining to watch. I like him a lot. I love Ben Affleck's like nonsensical head of Nike. The dude's just not wearing shoes and got this weird purple tinted car. Just like a complete tool in every way possible, but so much fun to watch.
Yeah, no, he's great. Like his fucking Buddhist aphorisms and shit.
Yep. The way he's like, maybe I should come into the meeting late. So it makes it seem like I was busy, but I took time out of my schedule to be here.
No. That's the thing is he doesn't want to do that at first. They talk him into it. And that was a question I had. I should have like taken the time to go and actually like time this out. I am really curious from the moment the Jordan family walks into the Nike building until the moment that Ben Affleck comes into the room, what the precise time in of the movie we're watching. Because they make a big deal of come in 7 minutes late, and he comes in and I'm like, I really should have taken the time to go see if that actually timed out to be like 7 minutes on the fucking dot, and he's just that should have been the fucking end credit stinger, is just him outside the room looking at his watch constantly.
7 minutes. Because of how short this movie is, I'm willing to bet it wasn't 7 minutes, but that'd be fucking hilarious if it was.
I mean, it's a decently long sequence till he enters the boardroom, and there's the whole like I'm thinking you time it from the second that the Jordans walk into the building, not the second that they walk into the boardroom. You'd probably get very close because there's quite a bit of dialogue that's happening up until he's in there. You mentioned the bit with Chris Tucker talking to the family as the closer and whatever. God, that fucking video was so shit.
It's so funny.
It watched it for like less than a minute. It was like, this is killing everything.
Because they were kind of on positive footing until they turned that thing on.
Yeah. And like, I love that you barely even see any of the video. You just hear the fucking song. And it's like, this is trash. This is so bad. I am curious how much of that speech is like based in reality at all.
You mean what after the video?
Yeah, Matt Damon's speech that like sells or like closes the deal, so to speak.
As far as we know, not at all.
Okay. I mean, some of it seemed like way too prophetic to be like that accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a ton about him specifically in this context. He's a big deal, and the credits mention this later. He's a big deal later when it comes to college athletes being able to get money for their name, image, and likeness of decades later. But in this context, as far as I know, that speech that he gives them is basically all just the movie, and it's all just sort of the movie trying to be, like you said, prophetic and sort of meta about Jordan's legacy because they're intercutting it with highlights for stuff that's going to happen in the future. I know that scene kind of rubbed some people the wrong way where it felt like it was too sentimental, but I kind of liked it in part because Matt Damon's so good at delivering that, and because it gives you in the context of the movie, this is all stuff that's happening in the future, but it's all played like a nostalgia highlight reel designed to make you nostalgic for the days that Michael Jordan was playing in the NBA, regardless of whether or not you were there to witness it. And so there is this sort of like tension between the actual promise of the person who has to go on and fulfill it with this sort of assumed greatness that everyone is just tossing on his shoulders that the movie never like really reconciles and just sort of leaves you with. And I kind of dig that too, because it gives that the impression of that sort of board meeting scene of like everyone is essentially defining the trajectory of this guy's life for him in a way that feels both really wrong but also just like the ideal circumstance for an athlete. And it's kind of messed up that is the ideal circumstance for an athlete.
Yeah, like it's a chilling ass scene, because I didn't really know, like, I'm not a sports guy, so I don't know a ton about like Jordan's life. That the one that just shocked me was the bit about his dad getting shot just coming up, the newspaper flash of that. I was like, oh fuck, man. And I do remember, because he stopped playing in 03. I just had to look that up real quick. And that was when he was with, what was it, the Magic or whatever. And I remember like people talking about, oh, he's just washed up, he doesn't know what he's doing anymore, why is he still playing, yada yada yada. I remember my mom defending him and stuff. Like my mom's kind of where someone will be talking, doing talking head sports analyst, and she'll start responding to it. It's like, but he's playing with people who are like 20 years younger than him or whatever. It's just funny. So I don't know, it is pretty crazy to look at that trajectory. You know what this makes me I just thought of this, and it's so perfect. That same like mentality that Matt Damon has in talking about what the world's going to build Michael Jordan up into and how no one can possibly live up to it. And we know that and we relish it. So I just need Matt Damon to play the Green Goblin and fucking bring that same energy in the same way. The only thing that people love more than seeing a hero rise is to see a hero fall, Spider-Man. I just need that.
I mean, it is a kind of essentially the same thing, because I feel like on a certain level, the way we talk about Michael Jordan is not all that different than how we talk about like fucking Spider-Man, right? Like, he's just a disembodied presence or an idea of a person, and a lot of the times the person can't live up to that disembodied impression of him.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's definitely the case. That being said, like you said at the top of the episode, there's only a couple like truly all-star, all-time athletes, and Jordan's arguably like the top of that list. Because of just, I'm sure Alfie probably won't listen to this, but like Alfie's the huge LeBron head, so the kind of like to Stan LeBron, there's like the manufactured rivalry between LeBron and Jordan. And I think that my takeaway, being an outsider to this, is it doesn't matter how many of Jordan's records or achievements LeBron James is able to break in the course of his career. It's the fact that Jordan was there to be the first one to achieve those things, so he'll be the one that's like always remembered the most for it. He was there first. He was there in the limelight at that time. There's a reason, like all of Babe Ruth's records, I believe at this point, have been surpassed, but we still fucking talk about Babe Ruth because he's like the first to do it,
Yeah, the thing with athletes, and I think the reason why Michael Jordan's such a good subject for something like this in a way that LeBron isn't, not to get into that debate of Jordan versus LeBron, but when you look at sports, so much of the people's attention span for a specific sport is going to rise and fall based on their interest in a specific team. If you want a sport to expand past just the people who follow the teams, then a player or a thing's got to capture the imagination of the general public. You talked about this before, about like the Patriots' undefeated season, right? People who don't follow football were in on Tom Brady and the undefeated Patriots season where they finally lost in the Super Bowl. At the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is probably a more talented quarterback than Tom Brady. I feel like maybe in 10 years, Patrick Mahomes is on pace to maybe in his lifetime get the same number of accolades that Tom Brady has. But because Tom Brady is now synonymous with the idea of the GOAT, of like the greatest of all time in something, it really doesn't matter what Mahomes ever does to beat that. And I think it's the same with LeBron and Jordan, where like LeBron could quite literally be the greatest basketball player of all time. But like, person on the street who doesn't follow basketball, who's the greatest basketball player of all time? Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
And that's
yep.
Yeah, exactly. So like he captured the imagination of an entire segment of the population, and Air does a really good job of like highlighting the importance of like, it's not just the basketball, it's this prophetic image of who this person is that transcends anything that you could watch them do on the basketball court. And at the end of the day, the person, who they are, what they did, and their inconsistencies all kind of get washed under the rug because the image of them is so big. The article that I mentioned at the top, it has a section towards the end where it talks about Michael Jordan's relationship to the NBA after he retired. And he was an owner in the Charlotte Hornets, or not Hornets, the Charlotte Bobcats before they became the Hornets. And while he was an owner, the Bobcats had the worst record, I think, up to that point, or it might still be the worst record ever, of 7 wins and 59 losses. Like, they were just abysmal. But he was part of the owner and the management for the team, and you don't see a lot of people talking about the trouble with that team, even though Michael Jordan was in their corner. And then in the last decade, in 2011, 2012, there's this bit about how the contracts for NBA players, where a certain percentage of the basketball-related income would go to the players versus the owners. Up until 2011, 2012, it was 57% in favor of the players, which is something that Michael Jordan was really heavily for when he was a player. The second he became an owner, though, guess who was on the other side arguing that the percentage should be more in favor of owners? Michael Jordan. And so when those kinds of things shift, when those loyalties go away, when the person falls short of who we want them to be, there's a lot of grace the general public will give you where you can just keep fucking up. And if that image of you is still big enough, then it doesn't matter how much you fuck up. We're having this conversation now with like Bill Belichick and how terrible he's doing as the coach for UNC football. He's doing abysmal there. But how bad does he really have to be to get him out of the conversation of greatest NFL coach of all time? And he's probably going to have to fuck up a lot more before we entertain that notion, just because the legacy of who he was is so big in people's minds that it's going to be hard to shatter.
You've mentioned the Patriots twice now, so I have to come up with my take on the Patriots.
Okay.
So in like all the sports movies, like the fictional sports movies, usually it's like kids teams. There's like the team that just has everything going for them, and they are like objectively the best team, and then they have to go up against like our underdog team that we're seeing, and then like the good team cheats.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? I think the Patriots are just that. Like, they're already good enough. They were already, under Bill Belichick specifically, they're already like the best, but they cheated anyway.
No, we got to keep this train rolling.
Like, legitimately, because I remember, like, to your point though, like Bill Belichick was, the coach of just the most broken fucking team ever with Brady and what was his name? That was the running back for the 07 Patriots. Reggie Bush, was that it? It's just like this absolutely broken fucking football team to the point where like I'm pretty sure the next season they had to get rid of one of their all-stars because it was just too big, it was too good. So there's just all this craziness. But like Bill Belichick still got caught for fucking like cheating by, filming the other team's practices and stuff. And it was just like, I didn't know I couldn't do that. What the fuck? You didn't know? You were hiding.
And it's weird like how the lengths that like good teams will go to do stuff like that. Like right now there's a whole thing about the head coach for the Ravens lying on the injury report for Lamar Jackson, the quarterback, saying that he was a full participant in practice when he clearly wasn't. And Lamar doesn't have an agent. He's his own agent. So like anything that comes out about his health comes directly from him. So if the head coach says something that contradicts what he says, then those two guys are not on the same page, and it's a problem. And And like it's just kind of rampant. I mean, we had the same thing with Joe Burrow a couple years ago in the Bengals, and the Bengals are kind of a broken front office. Um, this is a good segue though, because I sent you a clip earlier today of Jaden Daniels earlier this week playing and getting injured, and he lands on his hand, and you see his elbow just like pop out, and it's legitimately kind of brutal. And he's clearly going to be out for a while. He's probably going to be out for the season at this point. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But Jaden Daniels is like the franchise quarterback for the Commanders. As a rookie last year, he made it to the NFC Championship game. He had arguably the greatest rookie season any quarterback's ever had. There was a lot of high hopes for him going into the season. But in a year and a half, he's already been out with injury like 3 times, counting this one. And there is this sort of larger problem of, even if the image of the superstar player is really, really big and that's never going to get popped, does that do a disservice to how we treat the actual people when we're holding them to standards that they can't possibly live up to? And so when you talk about like quarterbacks being great, when you talk about like the Bills being amazing because Josh Allen went Superman, there is that sort of like dehumanizing element where we always say that. We're like, Josh Allen is Superman, Patrick Mahomes is Superman, Jaden Daniels is Superman. They put on the cape and they single-handedly save the team, either because they throw really well or really accurately, or because they can make a play with their legs or something like that. But they're always risking injury when they do that. And there is this sort of unfair double standard we give them, where if they don't play and risk injury, we feel like they wussed out. Then if they do play and get injured, we're like, well, it's all your fault. You shouldn't have been in that situation. So Lamar Jackson, when he got injured earlier this season against the game of the Chiefs, he sat out the second half of the game. And the next day, all anyone would talk about on the sports talk shows was Lamar Jackson gave up on his team. He just gave up. He was too far behind. He just didn't want to play anymore. He wasn't really injured. He just gave up. Now, days after Jaden Daniels, in a blowout, when he had no reason to keep playing, gets injured because he was trying to help his team win, everyone's like, he had no business being there. I can't believe he risked his health to do this. This is a travesty. And I'm like, pick a side, dude. Like, you can't be like, put on the cape and be Superman, and then when they get injured because they're trying to play Superman, act like it's their own fault.
Like, sports in and of themselves kind of bore me. It's just too much stopping and starting. Like, I like sports movies a lot. I don't like sports because like the drama just has too many breaks in it. I can't get carried through on the excitement. But if there's one thing that I dislike more than sports, it is the fucking talking heads around sports. Oh my god, I fucking hate those guys so much. Like the only thing I think I hate more than sports talking heads is political commentator talking heads when they start talking about like body language during a debate. I can't fucking stand that shit, because it is just the most, like, you know, we're talking about with this movie the overly consumerist capitalization of everything. This like the talking head of the sports thing is just 100% it. I remember talking to my dad about like how I couldn't stand watching a game of football because, you know, by the clock, a game is 2 hours, but it takes 4 hours to get it done. And it's because every time the ball stops, there has to be a commercial. And he goes, no, that's what makes it such great television. Because my dad was in television advertising. That's what makes it so good for television, is because every time there's a stop and play, you get a chance for a commercial real quick. You get a chance for a commercial, and people don't want to walk away from the TV or turn it off or go to another station, because then they'll miss when the game comes back. And I was like, I fucking can't stand it. And then so you just got these talking heads that just go on and on and on about absolutely nothing, and will just contradict the fuck out of themselves because they just have to fill time and talk and talk and talk. Can't stand that shit.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. The whole sports media industry at this point is awful, and it's a big part of why these sort of like airless debates feel like there's such big life and death things. Like the whole LeBron versus Jordan thing, you can argue you like Michael Jordan better. You can argue that LeBron James is a better basketball player, whatever. But like the fact that we have to argue about it endlessly is because people on TV won't shut the fuck up about it. And some people are deeply irrational one way, like Stephen A. Smith. Other people are deeply irrational about it the other way, like Nick Wright. And so like it's just the way it is sometimes. And it makes it really frustrating because when you have these sort of like real stakes with real people, with their health, with their finances, with their future, and they have to get subsumed into this industry to be successful, it feels like there's nothing that could happen in this industry aside from being really rich and really psychopathic. And that's why a lot of the people that join major sports leagues, they either retire and have to get a different job, or they stay in and become broadcasters and just keep churning out the machine. Part of what makes, I think, Air so entertaining and so like endlessly rewatchable is that every time I watch it, I feel like I'm seeing like the birth of sports talk television, where the way Sonny talks and the way there's like this life or deathness to every decision that they make, it feels like such a precursor to like Fox Sports.
I would definitely agree with you. It's got a lot of that going on. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to put in the movie. It's a bad thing for society, though.
Yes. Okay, I can agree with that. Yeah, this movie, I hadn't really like walked away from it feeling that way, but this movie does a really good job of like showing a juxtaposition of how a bad thing can still just have like really good feelings behind it. Because the movie, makes a big deal out of it, and like to a certain extent it celebrates that Nike became such a big just monopolistic company within the space of basketball shoes in particular, but like shoes in general. And it paints it, I wouldn't say in a neutral light. It certainly paints it in a positive light, but it does so within the context of all these other things that are like arguably really fucked up, and you kind of see that more in the subtext of the movie than in like the plain text. So I thought that was just really, really impressive.
Yeah, I think Ben Affleck as a director has a really good eye for those sorts of things where he can keep the movie moving, he can keep it breezy, he can keep it really entertaining and celebratory, but those like sort of darker shades always find a way to kind of poke their head through. It's not like the relenting barrage of like melodramatic bad decisions like Gone Baby Gone is, and it's not like as self-serious as like Argo is, but like both of those movies, there is a certain element to this that almost plays like a thriller. And because it's a thriller about a guy trying to get an athlete to sign on to basketball shoes, it feels like a fun thriller. But that sort of cinematic language of like the stakes and the pressure and the real consequences, they still kind of worm their way in from underneath. And by the time you get to the end, there is sort of a feel-goodness about the movie, and maybe this is just me, but like after it's over, I'm always kind of left feeling kind of gross about how all of this transpires and whether or not any of this is a good thing.
I think some of it's good. I think probably the best note that the movie ends on is the Nike CEO saying he feels so bad for setting such a dangerous precedent. He's like, and what's the most money we've ever made on a single pair of shoes? $3 million? He can have it. It's fine. And then, like, the text just comes up on screen. The Air Jordan would go on to sell 126 million units in the first year. And it's like, so when we talk about, like, is capitalism a bad thing? Yes, but should someone that is being used as a agent of capitalism be paid a fair share for their for their
Yeah.
image, their likeness, their contribution, their labor, whatever? The answer is yes. That's like a good start to rolling back the evils of capitalism. And if everything just worked that way, we probably wouldn't be talking about it as evil as it is. But it's not good capitalism if you're not doing that. If you're not taking advantage, cutting corners, and screwing people over, then you're a bad capitalist. Um, and so to see that, like, you get Jordan at such a young age, his parents are still living in the home that he grew up in. This is not yet the Jordan that would become, owner of NBA teams and willing to try to screw over players for his own benefit. This is just the young man who is trying to get the best deal he can that is going to go on and build kind of this all-star image of himself. I think there is positivity in that. It's okay to feel good about that, and it does, to some extent, kind of still punch up, as opposed to punch down at, like, the greedy company owners kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there with his shoe deal in particular, there is a sort of like you die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain sort of thing with it, where it's such a good sentiment, but it's such a clunky line. But
It's iconic. It's fucking iconic.
But
I put that shit in my own movie.
But the idea that he gets a profit share for the shoe, great, awesome, really cool. But as history would go on and unfold, and one of the notes that the movie ends on about NIL for college athletes, it starts creating this larger problem of, are we now sort of predatorily thinking about the image and likeness of athletes as a commodity that we can sell, and we'll get them to sign over their souls to us if we promise that we give them a little bit of extra money for it. The NIL stuff that's happened in the last few years, it's a really complicated can of worms, because the idea that universities and college programs just forced players to sign away the rights to their name, image, and likeness and not get paid for it was really fucked up and was exploitive. So now the fact that players can't actually make money off of that because they're stars in college, that's good. But you also see how so many of them now are getting consumed by brand deals and branding opportunities, and signing up for these sort of like predatory relationships to industries that they're just not old enough to understand. And they're getting put in spotlights that they probably shouldn't be put in the first place, and it distracts from the sports, number one, but it's also just long-term really financially bad for them. And so it's a complicated web where you're like, I want the players to make the money that they deserve because they're the ones putting themselves at risks. But there's got to be a better system of compensation for them that doesn't rest on, we need to make you less of a person and more of an image that we can sell to people devoid of who you are.
Yeah. Like, that's just, generally not good.
Yeah.
Bad. it's exploitation. I do remember that story. I was a bit surprised to see that come up when he was fucking trying to jog.
Yeah, that's just a good scene. He just fucking gives up.
Yeah, like, he doesn't even make like half a lap or anything. He runs for like 10 seconds.
He makes it like 6 yards and he's like, no, thank you.
But yeah, like that. When that little text thing popped up about how he was on the team that helped get college athletes recognition, I do remember when that case was going on. I remember that, like, because the big one was all the NCAA games that were released through EA and shit, and it's like I didn't even like. You would assume that they can't just do this shit with these guys' likenesses and make, billions of dollars off of it. That, like, somewhere along the line they'd have to have gotten at least, not necessarily fairly compensated, but compensated. To find out that, like, no college player for 20 fucking years was ever given a check for appearing in an NCAA triple A titled game. Released yearly. That blew my mind. I was like, of course they fucking deserve. What are you talking about? The purity of college sports. They don't make the games, man. Like,
especially in sports where, like, with college athletes, it's so predatory because you're getting scholarships to play sports. But then if you play a sport and get injured and you're not making money off of any of these games, what the fuck do you do now?
I don't know. It's fucking wild. I remember Shaq was in a movie that was about the some of the controversy of the college sport recruitment shit that went on, because his beginning of his career was like a big scandal with that, and I remember he played himself in the movie, which was kind of a wild thing to do. So it's like, well, I wonder how it's going to frame him in this film. We were talking about the shoes a little bit earlier, and I remembered that Shaq had his own line. I wasn't sure if those were still a thing, and they are. Where they even went so far as to, like, copy the silhouette of the dunk. But using, like, Shaq's fucking gorilla-looking ass. Double hands on the rim, like, fucking knees up. Shit.
That's the thing, is, like, there's a lot of sports a lot of athletes that have, like, their own clothing lines and their own shoe lines, but, like, what looks as cool and as clean as the Air Jordan?
Oh, no, not, like, that's the thing, is it sets the standard. God, like, the Jordan dunk, quote unquote, was so damn iconic, and they put it in the movie, and it is just crazy to watch in slow motion that man literally glide through the air. But it was so iconic, and I remember, like, one of the big controversies was when Michael Jordan's son was in college playing basketball. I remember this fucking clip going over all the time, because this would have been when I was in, like, high school and shit, of he gets dunked on by another player, and just to be mean, the other player did his dad's dunk. Jesus Christ. That's so dirty. And, like, I just remember that clip over and over and over again. I was like, God, that's just me.
Damn.
Yeah. Generational disrespect, man. Yeah. No, but the Air Jordan, like, look is so clean, and it's similar to what we were talking about earlier with the idea of, like, is LeBron the better player than Jordan? It doesn't really matter. Jordan was the one that, like, became the most famous basketball player first. Like, it's interesting to compare him, because they talk about Larry Bird and they talk about Magic Johnson, and those guys were, like, really, really big names, and it's just so, like, crazy to think about how much Jordan eclipsed those names, that they're not even, like, considered near the top compared to, where he is. Like, just, I don't even know, like, the history of the records and stuff. I know for a long time the championship rings was, like, the big thing that Jordan stands had over LeBron, and I think that's out. So I'm assuming that Jordan just completely dwarfed Bird and Johnson's championships and stuff too.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff about how Jordan's, like, specific athletic ability just changed the way that you physically had to play the game, because he could do stuff that other people just simply couldn't. And that's part of where him like gliding through the air to get the Air Jordan logo comes from. And I mean, you see that with other players in other sports, or even in basketball throughout history. But when one person like so fundamentally alters not only how the game is played, but makes the entire public consciousness of the game aware to that specific style, even if they stopped watching after Jordan, it's really hard to like shake the faith that that's the greatest basketball player of all time. I was watching a football documentary a couple weeks ago, and it mentioned Patrick Mahomes, and a sports scientist was talking about like how he moves and how he throws the balls and stuff. And he basically made this point that when you're moving at any sort of high rate of speed, your body physically cannot turn but so much. Because if all your energy is going towards going in one direction, then your peripheral vision, your ability to turn, your ability for your spine to maneuver, it's going to be limited at the rate of how fast you're going in that direction. So when someone like Patrick Mahomes is able to run straight ahead, turn their head, and sidearm a ball in that direction, it's just a kind of level of athletic ability you don't normally see in people. And that's part of what makes it so amazing to watch, is that like he's doing stuff that for a lot of players, even in that position, just shouldn't physically be possible. And it changes the way that the game has to be played. So like, because of Patrick Mahomes' early Chiefs record and the light show of their offense, the way that they were being able to target balls downfield, it changed the way that the defense in the game is played. The fact that we always have two high safeties now as just like the standard for football defense is because Patrick Mahomes is able to just always light up the field and chuck it downfield. That's why that exists now. And Jordan's kind of the same way, where his existence forced other teams to defend in a way that became so ubiquitous that it just changed the nature of the game. And that's not a thing that a lot of great players after that are really able to do, because at that point the game is evolving independently of them as opposed to evolving simply because of them.
That's a good way to think of it. And like I'm a bit out of my element at that point, so I think I'll just leave you at that one. I don't know if I have anything else to give input on, but I was trying to work my way back to just like the design of the shoe, where the guys like I love the conversation of it's got to be the greatest shoe ever built, ever made, the most perfect shoe ever, and like arguably it is, because you know those things are just so iconic, and the debate becomes, are they so iconic because it is such a well-designed shoe, or is it just because of Jordan, or is it like a blend of these two things? Would the Nike Air Jordan design, would they have been able to give that to Charles Barkley or anyone else? You know, it's funny that Charles Barkley gets like named here because he was, you know, another big. He eventually became another big name of that era. You know, he's in Space Jam.
The real star maker.
Right? Like, so, you know, he became another thing, and, you know, be on the heels of Jordan's, like, you know, multimedia, like, iconography. I remember Charles Barkley, you know, tried to ride the coattails of that a little bit, and like Rodman as well to another extent. The superstarness became more than just the pure athletic ability. I remember Charles Barkley had that fucking like ad, "I am not a role model." Like, Charles Barkley's not fucking bad boy of sports. What are we talking about here? Like, Rodman was just, you know, because of all the crazy antics. Rodman and Lady Gaga are like on that same level of just understanding what will get attention.
Speaking of getting attention, and to your point, like Did you know, because I didn't know this, I didn't realize that Nike was paying a fine every time Jordan was on the court with the Jordans because they were red.
I did know that. That was like really iconic. I remember doing some kind of college course talking about the like best marketing things anyone had ever done, and that was up there. Nike got
That's
pretty
crazy.
Yeah, Nike got pretty fucking dirty with like tricks like that. In that era, they did another thing with like the Olympics, and even though Adidas was the official shoe, like Nike just bought basically like every billboard around the Olympic Village and like around the city of where the Olympics was being held, and just advertised Nike everywhere, even though they weren't the official shoe of the Olympics that year or some shit. It's just Nike had a bunch of like dirty marketing techniques like that.
That's
that
crazy.
Served them crazy well. Yeah, I mean, like it's a crazy fine. $5,000 because your shoes aren't 51% white is, let's just be honest, is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But like the fact that he's wearing these shoes even though he's getting fined just helps lead into the marketing that they're doing of they're the greatest shoe ever for the greatest player ever. So he's like,
right.
He's out there breaking all these records and paying $5,000 per game to wear these shoes on the court. Like, yeah, fucking it looks like the shoes are the reason that he's so good somehow.
Right. I mean, and it's like far be it from us from saying it's Nike that made Michael great, but there is something to be said about the fact that like you're watching the game on TV, and the only guy on the court with a different pair of shoes is also the one just zipping past people and dunking over their heads and stuff. And there is something about that element of just like he's different from everyone else. Not only does he play differently, but he looks different. He's got those bright red shoes racing through the court. It's almost like everyone's playing basketball and Michael Jordan's the main character.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, it's that relation, and that's a lot of what the movie is based on, of that he is so sure that this is going to be the greatest player. He's got this feeling, and I don't know how much that's that feeling was made up for the movie or that feeling was real. It certainly feels real, given just all of the lengths that he goes to and that the company is portrayed to have. I don't feel like you could make the argument that this was routine calculation for them. Particularly when they say stuff like, we have never cut a bigger deal to any single athlete. Like a lot of this is just on this notion that Jordan's going to be, again, talking about someone the same way you do Babe Ruth is pretty fucking crazy to like, before he's played a single NBA game, he's talking about him like that,
Well, and we use Jordan kind of like we use the word Google. It's just a verb now, or a noun now, where who is the Michael Jordan of X thing? Who's the Tom Brady of X thing? It becomes this sort of shorthand for, if you say it's the Jordan of something, it's just shorthand for it's the greatest of all time. And that's, like, we don't, again, not to start a debate, but like, we don't do that with LeBron, right? We don't say who's the LeBron of. There's no sort of like social purchase to that, the way there is for like Brady and Jordan.
Who's the LeBron of DC superheroes?
Probably Superman, right? The person everyone who reads comics says is the best, but not the one that anyone gives a shit about. Because the Jordan of DC Comics is Batman, right? So Batman Jordan, Superman is LeBron.
I'm gonna send this episode to Alfie. He has to watch this entire episode
you
do
could
like
also,
a live reaction to it.
You could also argue that Batman's the Tom Brady of superheroes, and then Spider-Man's the Patrick Mahomes of superheroes. Because there's the GOAT, and then there's, like, the guy who could be the GOAT in a different sort of way.
Yeah. Alright. Do you think we have anything else we want to cover with this movie, or do you think we're pretty well wrapped up on it?
I'm pretty good on it. It's a good movie. I like this movie a lot.
Yeah, no, this is really good. Ben Affleck's, really good director. Do you think Ben Affleck's ever gonna make the transition where he just stops being in movies and just starts solely directing?
God, I hope so. I love, with the exception of Live by Night, I like all of the movies he's directed, and I kind of wish he would just take the Clint Eastwood route of, like, slowly writing himself out of his movies and just directing things forever.
Maybe. He's, he's not young anymore, but he's still got, like, a lot of career ahead of him, so maybe he's saving that for, when he's just older. But it's kind of crazy that he used to just be kind of like a joke of, the pretty boy, rom-com actor or whatever, but kind of an idiot, and then he just started directing films, and everyone was like, holy shit, where did this come from?
Dude won Best Picture and Best Director. People forget. He also won an Oscar for writing or co-writing Good Will Hunting.
Still haven't seen Good Will Hunting. I need to watch that at some point.
Oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah. Alright, well, I think that'll do it for this episode. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. We did ratings. So I will give this movie 4 out of 5 the greatest shoes of all time.
I'm going to give this 4 out of 5 I Have a Dream speeches.
That was crazy.
I know! I couldn't believe that was true! That's so fucking nuts!
Yeah, for sure. Alright. Until next time, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the basketball history erotica lover, ?
Sure. And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing